Throughout the entirety of the Barbie movie, I kept asking myself the same question that I just couldn't fully answer. Is this film more offensive to men or to women? I spent over 2 hours thinking about just this, eventually arriving at the conclusion that it just hates everybody. It's anti-human, leftist propaganda, an example of political nihilism at its very worst. The cleverest thing about this film, however, was that it became an example of the very thing that it complained about. Just like a child opening a birthday card from their uncle to find it empty, the real world is packed full of woefully disappointing things and is fundamentally unfair. Well, so is this film. Cinemas have been packed full of people wearing pink, including myself, hopeful and optimistic that it actually might be worth remembering, only to find that it somehow managed to be depressing, damaging, and dull all at the same time. I would do a plot summary, but there's no point. As far as I'm concerned, there was no plot. So there. I guess let's just jump into this nihilistic shit sandwich. Let's begin with men, shall we? Ah, yes. I remember men. They used to follow some certain essential archetypes that we all knew and recognized and appreciated in our daily lives. Men are everywhere, after all. Male archetypes used to be competent, stoic, courageous, be they hero or villain. And sure, men have their flaws. Men can become power drunk sometimes. They can become dangerous and corrupt. They often have issues being vulnerable or talking about their emotions. But this balanced, nuanced image of men was what Hollywood used to use to get people into the cinema and to enjoy their movies. No politics, no philosophy, just an everyday social truth that we can all recognize. The Barbie film, however, tries to communicate something else. Here, men are the exact opposite. They are incompetent, emotional, and cowardly. The classic sexist tropes against men are wheeled out en masse. Here, men are dirty. They lack individuality. They revel in violence. They think they know everything about everything. It's made out that all men, every single man, benefits from patriarchy and all of this money and power I'm hearing so much about. Seriously, if I missed a patriarchy payout at some point, can somebody please tell me? It even goes as far as to suggest that gay men, by virtue of being men, are universally celebrated and accepted in this patriarchal society. Now, we're leaving the realms of just lazy filmmaking here and going into something else. Probably the world of potentially harmful messaging and oversimplifying. Unfortunately for the creators of the Barbie movie, gay men stand as an inconvenient exception to their power dynamic chart that they built the film around. So, they ignore or misrepresent the existence of gay men in order for their film to make, well, I was going to say make sense, but none of it really made any sense. You go watch it yourself and none of it makes sense. Now, moving on to misogyny. The movie tends to steer away from offending women for a good while. They even directly address how the whole Barbie franchise has made a whole generation of girls feel inadequate, and indirectly addressing it by having in-your-face displays of diversity in the opening scenes. But then it quickly gets out of hand. Any woman who comes to enjoy the company of men is declared to be brainwashed. Because of course you must be brainwashed to see any value in masculinity. The way I see it, whoever smelt it, dealt it. The first person to call someone else brainwashed is probably a brainwashed ideologue themselves. And how do they get their sisters out of this man-loving trance? Well, they get someone to rant in their faces about why it's impossible to be a woman these days. I mean, what? That couldn't be more of a Gen Z woke leftist answer to people disagreeing with you. Write them off as brainwashed, then scream in their faces. Jesus fucking Christ. It's as if they're not even trying anymore. And to add to their attacks against other women, they wheeled out some of the old Barbie models. One of them had a feature where its breasts grew, on command. Another was a sugar daddy Ken model. And yes, these are funny pieces of trivia from the past, but are they examples of corporate misogyny? Please. Getting a boob job and using your looks to milk money out of rich and lonely men sounds just like the actions of an empowered woman to me, no matter what angle you look at it from. At one point, one of the many irrelevant characters says, "Men hate women, women hate women, it's the only thing they can agree on." And honestly, the more I watched that film, the more I began to believe that's what they actually thought. The plot's incoherent, making no attempt towards sense at all. There's no stakes whatsoever. Nothing we're made to care about. The characters are non-existent, beyond portraying the nasty stereotypes that they're meant to. There's no discernible message, not even a clear rendition of the usual anti-men dogma that we're so used to hearing these days, as if they seem to contradict themselves at any turn without adding any sort of nuance or sense of progression or discovery. Near the end, I just wanted to leave. The guy next to me started scrolling shamelessly on his phone. Usually I'd call out such a cardinal sin, but in this case I was like, well, yeah, fair enough. You should have gone to see Oppenheimer. The dialogue was some of the worst I've ever seen on the big screen. Slow, pointless, drawn out, oftentimes not even making any sense at all. But the most unforgivable part was its message of anti-human political nihilism. What was the gist of this film? What ideas do they try to communicate in the minds of cinema-goers these days? 1. Men are tyrants. 2. Women enable tyrants. 3. The real world is horrible. 4. A woman-led fantasy world made of plastic would be much better. Excuse me for being old-fashioned, but I like a little bit of uplift in my stories. Failing that, an excuse to be grateful for the life that I do have. I didn't see how anyone could enjoy a message like this, beyond how it might reaffirm the ideology they've been parroting at others their entire lives. So, when you're out on your travels through our cultural wasteland, if you see a copy of the Barbie movie, don't just pass it by. Smash it to bits with something heavy and burn the remains, lest some other innocent passerby become depressed by its contents.
Wandering through the wasteland here below. Wasted, wandering through the wasteland here. Like a motherfucking wolf. Wasted, wandering through the wasteland here below. Wasted, wandering through the wasteland here. Like a motherfucking wolf.